welcome back to the podcast. Okay, I am so fucking excited to have Jaz on with me today. I'm going to let Jaz explain how we met because I always find it really interesting when people explain through their lens of how they met. So I'm going to have her explain that. But I am really excited. I have not known Jaz very long, and I'm not having her come on just because she has an incredible like business sense and she can bring a lot of value from like a marketing and branding and just like experience in business lens, but just because she is like probably one of the coolest people I've ever met, and we've become very quick friends, or at least I think we're friends. I don't know, I haven't decided, but we've become very quick friends, and we are very similar and so different. And I just thought we should just riff and shoot the shit on this podcast. We have no plan for the podcast. We have no direction. We're just talking. So if you don't like that, then go enjoy doing something else for the next hour of your life. If you enjoy that, then we'll just see where this podcast goes. But Jaz, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I am so stoked to be here. Like, truly, so excited.
I do want to share, though, why you're on the podcast now, if that's cool. Actually, I'm not asking your permission, but Jaz and I have some like friends and mentors and things in common. And I think we talk a lot about like our goals for our business and what we need to do to better ourselves. Like, we're very personal development focused. And she's like, so I need to get on podcasts and do that. So by the way, and I was like, you're on, you're scheduled, we're good. Didn't even let her ask the question. So I was really excited because I want to have you anyway. But can you actually tell us like why your priority is getting on podcasts right now, like media, all that? Like, just give us like the rundown of like why this is top of mind for you right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like I haven't really shared part of like what I've been experiencing this past year in my business, but I've been reaching out to people that like I know, like, and trust, and I love their podcast, which includes obviously you, Ash, because you're amazing. Because my business has been on an interesting journey this year, and I feel like I'm in this moment of wanting to put myself out there on different avenues a little bit more and kind of embrace the transformations that I've been on, share them, and also like I've been kind of in this phase this past year in my business where I keep like changing things. And I'm like, okay, we need to like put ourselves out there, speak about what's been going on, and just like collaborate with other people. I think I've been in my shell a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think when you are through seasons where maybe you don't feel so confident, like hiding it allows people to not necessarily see that, because I think there's a vulnerability, especially if you are in quote the online space, which I talk about a little bit. I know I have people who listen from like a corporate background or teachers or nonprofits and people who know me from By the Blazer. Like there's all these people that listen, but there's this word, this phrase of online space, this online space business world that is very, I think, heavy and judgmental. And especially if you're in a business consultant coaching realm, you being vulnerable, and I think in turn tells us that we're bad at our business. Like, oh, like I'm not crushing it right now. Oh, I'm actually not good at the thing that I teach people to do or help people do. So I think when you're struggling and you're not feeling confident, like our default is to hide. So I totally understand that, but you're fucking amazing. So stop fucking hiding, because I am over it. Like, don't do it anymore. But I do want you to tell people like what you do. So not necessarily your background or the last year, but like, what do you do? Who are you? Give us a rundown.
Yeah. So I'm obsessed with content marketing. That's kind of how I started this brand. And essentially the background of how I came into helping people with their marketing and their online presence and their business was I was creating content for fun for years without getting anywhere with it. And all of a sudden, like I had this year where I like blew up on TikTok. I had these brands reaching out to me. I worked in an agency. And then all these business owners were like, oh my God, you're good at TikTok. Can you help me? And one thing after another, I just started helping businesses with their marketing, and then it expanded to business coaching. So it's really just been this journey of like not insisting on the outcome and just doing what I love every day until it blossomed into something that I didn't even expect. And so now I help business owners and entrepreneurs scale their business, optimize their marketing for lead generation, and build personal brands that align with who they are.
Do you think you ever saw me on TikTok like 3 years ago?
Yeah, for sure.
You did? Okay, because I told you that. It was like, okay, so Jaz and I met, I'll give a little bit of context, kind of, but we met at a retreat. I knew who she was. Your name popped up, I think, on Instagram. I was like, oh, I've seen you before. And then I messaged you just being like, you're so cool. Then I saw we were going to the same retreat, and I was like, oh, this is really awkward timing. And then we ended up talking a little bit. Then we met at this retreat, and I was like, we're going to be besties. And also, like, one of our mutual friends, Kate, she was like, you guys are going to be obsessed with each other. I think she was a little jealous. She's like, you're going to take me out of the little group. But we met at this retreat, And I was like, I've literally seen this bitch before. Like, I remember seeing you on TikTok, because 2 years ago, no one was on TikTok. Like, I feel like we were like one of the first people to like really pushing our businesses on TikTok.
Yeah, yeah. It was such a weird time because I literally went from making like $5,000 months to $50,000 months because I blew up on TikTok, which was fucking insane. And
Yeah.
so it was like a unprecedented time. Like I would say that that's an accurate statement that people weren't really on TikTok. People thought it was like a place for dancing or like silly
Mm-hmm.
content, and they didn't think it was viable or legitimate to create lead generation and business opportunities on that platform. And they were
Yeah.
prioritizing Facebook and Instagram. And I'm like, no, like on TikTok, you can get leads. And I heard this story so many times of like, the people on TikTok don't have money. And I'm like, everybody's on fucking TikTok. Like, my dad is the chief operating officer of a company, and all he does is watch TikTok on the toilet in the morning. So, like, shut up, you know? So,
There was a study that showed like a high percentage, not like majority, but a high percentage of users had a six-figure income that were on TikTok
mm-hmm,
regularly. Like, what the fuck?
mm-hmm,
I
yeah.
am such a component of TikTok. You know, I also grew my business with TikTok. So, like, when you first started on TikTok, were you on there as like a user and then did the business, or was the business like how you actually started?
No, so I started from just a pure creating content for fun kind of
Yeah.
perspective. I was actually creating content about being a woman in a male field, which I think is like a trend on social media right now, which I think is so funny. But I was literally doing that like 4 or 5 years ago, during 2020. And I was like creating these videos about what it's like to be a woman in engineering and what it's like to be a woman in like the Arab culture, because it's very like male heavy. And I was just creating these funny videos, and I like blew up. I got featured on BuzzFeed. And it was like this gateway, I felt like, because I loved creating videos even as a kid with our family's camcorder. And all of a sudden I could do it on my phone in 2 seconds and put any short form video as many times as I want, not annoy anybody, and be seen by strangers. I was like, I felt like I hit the jackpot because this is my way of expression. And so I just did it for fun. And I think a lot of people who start businesses do like, it usually starts from a place of like, I just did something because I loved it, and then I realized there was opportunity.
Yeah. So I had a question, but I also feel like we need to talk about how you got into engineering, because I remember when you told me that you went into engineering, I was like, okay, I get you're smart. Like, Jazz comes off very smart. You guys can tell this from the podcast. Like, I'm not just saying this because she's here. She just comes off very intelligent. Like, you're just very technical. Like, I can tell you're smart. But you're also so fucking creative. And I find that very confusing because, like, if I met you, I think, well, I did just meet you now, but I feel like if I was like talking to you on a day to day basis, I would be like, she's an engineer. But then seeing your business, I'm like, you come from such a creative place. How the fuck did you get into engineering? Like, how was that the pathway? Please explain this to me.
Um, that's a great question. If I'm being honest, I think it was just to make my dad proud. Like, I think that's where it comes from. So, like, sure, like I'm textbook smart, but it's also because I like worked really hard, I would say. Like, it wasn't like I could just like sleep through class and get A's. Like, I was the person who was like staying up till 1 a.m. studying for like my science test in middle school. Like, I was
Yeah,
insane like that. And it was just because I wanted the success, the validation to make my parents proud. And then in Middle Eastern culture, like being somebody who's successful in math and science is like the ultimate form of like intelligence and respect. Like, my
yeah,
uncles like try to prove who's better at math all the time. And so like as a little girl, I was like, oh, maybe that's like how I prove myself and how I win and how I succeed and where I could be happy. And so that's kind of where it came from without me realizing it. And so time and time again, I would just try to like be good at math and science, be good at math and science. And all of a sudden, all of those hours, I was like, oh, I guess I should just do engineering because that's what I've succeeded in. And like, I'm good at these things that a lot of people kind of struggle with. And so, yeah, I chose
yeah,
engineering, and I didn't realize that like you can love what you do, and it doesn't have to be the thing that like you can't got validation at for your entire life growing up. So I was like,
yeah,
yeah, just like engineering is a good field, and you can get good money without having to get a higher level education. Like, you can get your bachelor's and get a great job. And so yeah, I just like pushed myself, and it was fucking hard. And looking back, I'm like, yeah, it was fucking hard because you didn't love it. But I
yeah.
was just so fueled by the desire to feel good enough that I didn't even realize it. So I was studying nonstop, and I got all the right grades, but in the end I realized it wasn't what I loved.
What did your parents reward you for most growing up? Was it your grades?
Yeah, 100% it was. I think it was something that I felt like I remember my mom used to have like a list of books that I read, and she would show everyone, look how smart Jasmine is. Like she's read like 100 books this year. And
Yeah.
I know why they did it. Like they genuinely thought like that's what they were proud of me for. But I didn't realize that there were other things that I loved that probably they didn't see that I didn't pursue because that's not what got attention.
Was it soccer or something else? Like, what did you actually love? Did you have like a dream job growing, like as a really young kid?
Yeah, so soccer is funny. I actually chose soccer because my dad played it. And I do love it now for my own reasons. Um, but that was something too that I did for like I think that reason. But I was watching home videos with my husband like 4 months ago. I don't even know, 2 months ago. And
Oh,
all of the home videos, I was behind the camera and I would make my family play out these scenes in my head, like creating content with a camcorder when I was like 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, before content creation was even a thing. I don't even know when YouTube really blew up, but I would
yeah,
literally hold the camcorder. I'm like, okay, you go here, you go here. We're going to make this funny scene. I was always wanting to film. I was always wanting, I would tell people, okay, film me. I'm going to go do something now. It was content creation before I knew what it was. And I didn't realize that that was like a thing because that wasn't a thing back then. So,
yeah. That's
yeah.
so insane. You know what was interesting? I remember there was this moment. I don't know if you've ever had a moment because you chose a very like I don't want to say a normal job. You chose a very like a job that people have heard of, like engineering, right? I
Mhm.
remember I was in freshman year of college and I was talking to someone. I was like, "Oh, what do you want?" I was like, "I'm going to go into business," and she's like, "I'm going to go into speech pathology," and I was like, "What the fuck is that?" Like I'd never heard of it, and I remember thinking like, how many jobs? Because you know, when people think of jobs, you're like, "I'm going to be a business person," and you think like business job, like there's all or an engineer job. But there's all these, if you Google like common jobs, I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, I've never heard of these jobs. I'm like, what degree did these people get to get this job I've never actually heard of? I just find that like really funny. So I was just thinking about that. Like, you didn't know that it, like now, if you search,
Yeah.
there's 85 content, marketing, whatever, like that's literally such a massive thing for businesses. But when you were
Yeah.
younger, no one was telling you to go into marketing because marketing thought advertising, which meant an ad firm, which meant no money. And now it's like really funny
Yeah.
that that's like such a profitable thing. And like, it's almost as if you like manifested your like current life, like a little bit.
It's almost like I did. It's almost like I did. And it's funny that you say that. It's true that like back then that wasn't like a title that was like common or like a thing that people thought about. It's so weird to think over
Yeah.
the last like 2, 3 decades now like content is at the forefront of everybody's minds. Like everybody understands what that means. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. But like also coming from I think a culture with parents who like didn't even know that was like a thing growing up and I would like make these videos on like even in middle school and high school like on my computer with a photo booth. I don't even remember what I would do. Silly videos and like I didn't recognize what it was. I just thought it was just, like me being silly. Like I didn't know it was like a real thing or what to even call it, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Did you do
yeah.
like YouTube or anything? Like, did you get into any of that? Or you were just
I
like over
tried
and
a few times. I
really?
tried a few times and it was just like I think I just was so focused on school and like to actually create something and put it out into the universe, you have to like understand like what you're doing. I don't even think I connected that that was a possibility. I know like in college, I tried to create a couple videos on YouTube. I found long form content really exhausting without realizing, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'm not meant to like do this thing, and then I just kept focusing on school. So, yeah,
Mm, I find that so like crazy. So interesting question. Now I'm like reflecting. It's so when I talk to Jazz, I have a lot of like self reflection. So I'm just going to tell everyone right now this episode is going to be full of two things. One, of me taking a moment to be like, whoa, I'm having like a moment of reflection right now. And also, two, the fact that I'm pretty sure we have so many mutual friends already. Like, we've become like we're integrated in each other's lives. My phone is blowing up right now from people who are messaging both of us. And I'm like, what is happening? Anyway, so I'm like,
oh,
what
I
is
don't,
going on
is
right
that my
now?
is that my computer?
Yeah, no, it's mine. I can like hear. I'm like, what is happening? Like, we have all these people texting us right now. I think people just know we're like doing the podcast. I'm not sure. But as you were talking about that, I want to ask you a question that like it's not a hard question, but like I don't know. I was just thinking about it for myself. What did you actually do for fun, or did you only ever do things for achievement growing
Yeah.
up?
It was
Probably
99%
didn't.
for achievement, I would say. What'd you say?
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you do soccer for fun, or was it because you could achieve in soccer, even though you enjoyed it, you didn't do it for fun, you did it for achievement?
Yeah, it was like always for achievement, I think. Which is a great question. And it's something I've been struggling with recently because I'm like trying to get back into soccer, and I made it onto like a semi-professional team, and then I recently quit. And I've like, I have all these like intense feelings about it.
Yeah,
And I'm trying to figure it out. I'm like, do I really love it? Am I doing it because I'm supposed to love it? How do I like navigate it as an adult while I also have like a lot of like trauma from like being on competitive sports teams and then not being good enough, and then having these male coaches that didn't know how to like create a safe environment for like their female young players who were going through hard times.
yeah,
Like it was hard. And so like going back to it is hard, especially when I did do it for achievement, and it was really hard to like do that growing up, and like I felt like I was never good enough. Yeah, I could go on, I'll go into that for forever, but I think that that's just like a symbol
yeah.
for a lot of what I did in my life.
Yeah. Well, when you're talking about content creation, I was literally having like a flashback. I feel like Jazz and I like lived very similar, like very different people. We have a lot of different background. Like my family dynamic and yours are very different, but I think our desire to make our dads proud, I think is a very common thing that I think you and I've talked about just a little bit, which I think
Yeah.
we could go into a totally other episode on that entire topic because I think that's a lot of the reason we do have done the things. But when you were talking about content creation, I was like, I know exactly why you didn't do it because I did the same thing. I didn't do it because I couldn't like monetize it or achieve with it. Like it wasn't something I could earn. It was like it looked more fun than something like that I could make money with or achieve with because my thing was like my dad didn't care about grades, he cared about money, but your dad cared
Mhm.
about grades because he saw grades as a way to get a good job in a high paying field. Whereas my dad saw me as like, well, if you could make money, you could like protect yourself from not being married. Like it's just very interesting, like how I think some people who are very creative, we actually ever ended up doing creative things because there's like a shame of doing it because it's not what we were taught is like important. Like creative
Yeah.
jobs are not necessarily prioritized as a good thing. Even though it's so
Yeah.
funny that they are now, I don't think that was the case 20 years ago or 15 years ago.
100%. And I think when it comes to like these little things that we do when we're younger that where we explore through creativity, if they're not like fostered or validated or commended for like that kid, that child, or that son or daughter like pursuing it, then a lot of people just like don't with it because they don't realize what it is. And so I can think of a lot of instances like with myself or even my cousins or my brother where like we were interested in these things or good at certain things that were outside of like school and sports or wherever whatever else was like the conventional ways to succeed or get attention that weren't fostered, and so we're given up on or like not seen as good enough. And I also think that that's part of like the immigrant mentality, is like my parents and my family came to America to like give us a good life and to have it better than they had in like the villages in the fucking desert in Jordan. And so like you have this weight with you of like, okay, if what they came here for was for me to get a good education and have a good career, then like that's what I have to do. And so you put all your eggs in that basket and you don't really see anything else. And it's I've seen a lot of like my family have these passions for music and art and modeling and all these things, and they come to my mind, but I know they haven't pursued it because I think they have that immigrant mentality, that first generation mentality, like born into them, and it can be hard to choose yourself in that environment when the sacrifice that you feel for your older generations is heavy, even if they don't mean to make it heavy. It's just something you think about without them even saying it.
What's some of your like first memories of your parents talking about like their journey as immigrants? Like, did your parents bring that up a lot? Was that when you were older? Like, how did they bring that to your attention to the point where that impacted so much of like the decisions and the way you operated as like a young kid?
It wasn't that they talked about it that much. It was more like I think I felt when I had things or when they gave me things, whether it was like gifts or experiences or being able to even play on a soccer team as a girl. It was always like
Yeah,
we never had that growing up. It was that reminder that they didn't have those opportunities. And so it wasn't that they were trying to do it to shame me, but it was like a
yeah,
reminder of like these are opportunities that like we didn't have and we want to give them to you. And so I felt
Mhm.
such a weight of like, because I love them so much, of like, oh my God, I can't imagine like these people that I love not having what they're giving me. And you feel guilt, you know, it's like this guilt that's built inside of you because every time you got something good, you were reminded it was something your parents didn't have. And so that was really
Yeah.
it. It wasn't like they were telling me all these stories and like the times they did open up about it, because honestly, my parents came when they were like 10 years old and my grandparents were
Yeah.
the ones that made the move. It was always just them remembering like playing on the streets with their siblings and like, you know, memories. It wasn't like heavy trauma. It was more like we didn't have this stuff and we had to work really hard in America to give it to you. And I had to always remember that.
Yeah. So it was like, and I think people, it's such an important thing to share. Like I don't know, I guess this is a question, but I just find it so interesting. Every time I talk to you, I feel like I'm like almost in therapy. It's very weird. Like I'm like, because you make me feel very safe in some of the feelings that I think I had as a kid. I always really struggled with when my friends were like, oh yeah, like I'm just, it's whatever, or I'm just gonna like go out and do fun. I'm like, I had the opportunity to work and make money, and the more money I make now will like set me up for the future. Like that was literally how I operated at like 12 years old. It was very confusing. I will remember that. I will never forget when my friend Lucy, not friends now, but I was friends with her at the time. She had a birthday party, and I got a call 4 days before her birthday from this family, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to babysit?" It's like a 10-hour gig, and my brain immediately went to $100. Like $100 is a lot of money at 12 years old. And obviously,
Mhm.
my dad, every time I made money, I'd go home and he'd be like, "Look how much closer you're to college." Like he like rewarded that so much. And I called my friend. I was like, "I can't come to your birthday." And she was confused. Like, no, that's not a typical 12-year-old
Yeah.
behavior. But now I look as an adult and I'm like, I'm so grateful that was like an instilled value in me. Like I feel like I understand the value of a dollar. I understand hustle. I understand working for what I have. Some people might disagree with me on that or whatever. Fine. I'm a privileged white woman and I understand that. And I grew up in a nice area, but like I was not handed things. I paid for my own
Yeah.
school. I bought my own car. I did all that. But I also wasn't homeless. So it's like a weird thing I struggle with of like, did I really earn it or was I gifted? I don't know. But I do feel like overall, my dad instilled a value of hard work. And
Yeah.
I don't think I really understood that until like my late 20s. So I guess I'd be curious for you because I know we always navigate trauma of growing up. Like, did you resent your parents for a while? Was there like a pride there? Like, how were you feeling as you were being shared this? Because again, I think it came from a place of love and like, and a good lesson to teach a young kid, but also when we're not ready to necessarily understand it to its fullest, sometimes it makes us operate or think differently where it's not always the positive impact that we don't want our parents are trying to instill in us. So I just didn't know,
Yeah.
like, when did that transition for you? Are you still struggling with that? Like, did you always have a good perspective about how they were talking to you? Like, what did that look like for you?
I think I struggled with it because I struggled to like feel my feelings and feel safe in it. And so I created complex dynamics in my family or when communicating with them, like even now, because I didn't know how to like feel it on my own. And so then I didn't know how to be communicative or like present. I think it's still something I'm working through. And like through the help of like friends, even you and like my husband, and like just growing with more awareness and understanding, it's really helping me understand where my complicated feelings come from, where the guilt comes from, the ways that I think and how I like what I find rewarding versus what I love, and like balancing all of that. I think it's complicated. I love my parents to death and I think that they gave like so much to me, and I think a lot of it is just because I care so much about them and I love them so much that I get sad and like think about the fact that they didn't have those opportunities. And so I think that was like the biggest weight. And I know my brother feels the same. But yeah, I think it's complicated. I think a lot of first generation Americans feel that way, of like complicated relationship with their parents because they understand the sacrifice. They feel this guilt. They try to balance making their parents happy, doing what they want to do, um, balancing the culture and like being like the oldest daughter. A lot of the things I've done, whether it was like figuring out how to apply to college and like navigate that by myself, to like normal things growing up, like I had to like figure out, or like it was a lot of responsibility, and then also like figuring out how to do a business by myself, like all that stuff. I think, I mean, most people, like I know you and a lot of other people have gone through it mostly independently.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of first generation Americans don't even like pursue starting a business because of that weight and the guilt and wanting to make their parents proud. not having the support system. People don't understand it. So
Yeah.
I try to like talk about it as much as I can because I know that a lot of people of color or from different backgrounds come to me and they say like, I'm so happy you talked about this because I feel so different. I feel like people don't get it. And so I appreciate you even asking questions.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, were you ever allowed to quit anything, or did you ever quit anything growing up, or did you feel shame in like abandoning something because like it was a gift, you know?
Hmm. That's a good question. I think I overachieved so much that if I ever did quit something, my parents were like, okay, like you're fine. You're like at the top of your class and
Okay.
you're like doing these things. And I don't think I started quitting things until like I was in my 20s and I realized that like I've been able to succeed at anything by just working hard. So if I don't feel like doing something, I don't have to.
Hmm. That's really interesting. Well, I was curious, like, oh my gosh, I wonder if you like allowed to quit anything or if that was like shamed on or that. I think we're very similar in that. Like, I achieved so much that if I really quit something, sports was a little bit different, but because my dad was really into like, I think my dad wanted me to be a boy. I don't really know, but whatever. But sports was a little different. But once I was in college, it was like I did my work, like I did what I needed to do. So I was kind of the same thing. What was like the first thing you quit in your 20s? Like a job,
Mm.
like a person, like what did you quit?
I don't know why I started thinking about something when I was a kid, actually. With and I can answer the one about in my 20s, but I remember when I was growing up, my parents wanted me to try every sport because like women weren't really allowed to play sports. Like I know my aunt got a scholarship to play basketball in college, and my grandfather was like, "No, you're not allowed to do that." And so my mom was like, I want you to try all the sports. And I was like, okay. So I did like dance, soccer, basketball, like softball, everything. And I ended up choosing soccer, obviously. And
Yeah.
I like quit all the other sports, but I remember my mom being sad that I chose like a masculine sport over something like dance or like modeling. She wanted me to be like a child model. She would send pictures of me because she thought I was like so cute to like all these like different agencies. She tried to really push me into dance because it was feminine. And I think she didn't like that I was like more tomboyish growing up. Like I liked being competitive and I liked being ambitious and I didn't really care much about a lot of the girly things. And so I remember that, and I know so I tried to make my mom happy, and I quit soccer for 1 year, and I still remember crying, and her because she was telling me like this is such a boy sport, like do you want to just try dance or something else? And I understand, like I think she wasn't able to like do those feminine things, like be a dancer or anything like that, so she wanted me to try it. But that was something that I think I struggled to like navigate what to give up because I didn't know who I was, and so it was hard for me to choose something because it was like what everybody else wanted of me. But yeah, even growing up in my 20s, I think the bigger things were like I started trying different business ideas, whether it was like creating content for brands, and then I was also like reselling vintage clothes at one point and doing fitness stuff. And so I was always flip flopping in that arena, and I didn't realize that's just like being an entrepreneur a little bit. So
I don't think any entrepreneur that's really successful, I know, like they're doing the business that they like started off with, or it's like it's a version, or it's like a completely new business. So we're now in like your 20s. You're starting. When did you start the business ventures? Like, did you do that all through your 20s? Was that something you did old, like in your teens, or did you just like was the content thing the first thing?
So I was doing fitness stuff online. I was creating content around fitness. And I didn't realize at the time it was because I liked creating content, not because I liked fitness stuff per se. It was just a way for me to have an excuse to like post videos and shit. So I was creating these cringy pieces of content about my workouts, and I had really no idea what I was doing. And that was like the first attempt at like creating a brand. And I started working with a clothing brand at my college because I did it from high school to college. I started powerlifting and posting about powerlifting. I like competed in nationals. It was like this whole thing. And I didn't love fitness. I just loved the excuse to like pull out my camera and like talk to the camera. And at the time, actually, this is a funny story. I would talk on my Instagram stories for like an hour straight in the car after my workout and like talk about what I did and like what I was working on, whatever. And at the time, like my husband, who we were just friends in college, used to watch my Instagram stories, and we ended up getting started dating years later. Like we just barely knew each other. And he's like, yeah, I used to always watch your Instagram stories in college, and I didn't really understand what you were doing, but you were like posting and you like seemed so passionate, and you would post all these videos all the time, and I would just like watch them laying in my bed. And I'm like, that's crazy because we barely knew each other and we ended up dating years later. But yeah, I think that was like the first stab I took at it. And it was hard because I posted about this recently. When I was posting about fitness in high school, like I had these four guys at my high school made an account to make fun of me. And so they were posting, like, if I would post about like doing pull ups or whatever, they would post a picture of them doing pull ups and then like mock the caption I wrote. And I tried to confront them in high school, and I was like, hey, is this about me? Like, what the fuck? Because some of those kids, since I was literally a child, like elementary school, and they were like, no, it's like making fun of all fitness people, but it was literally like copying my posts. But I kept going, I kept creating content, and I realized that like they were losers. So
Oh
yeah.
my God. We all have people who've made fun of us. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
every single person. I talked to one of my clients. I used to eat lunch in the bathroom in high school, and then people. I remember like
Really?
one of my yeah, one of my good friends, Casey. We reconnected. Like we played softball together at rec league, so like not at my high school, and
Mm-hmm.
we reconnected a year ago. She was back in the St. Louis area, and we were talking. I was like, yeah, I was like not very cool in high school. Like I felt very lonely. I struggled a lot. And she's like, I thought you were the most popular girl in school. You were so
Oh, I would
fucking
think so
loud
too.
in school. Yeah, I was like, what? I was like, I was so lonely. I said I literally would get my lunch and I either go work in the art room because I was in like an advanced art class. So you could like go during lunch, and like my teacher didn't care because like I was like one of her like 8 students of this like special program. So I'd either go and pretend that I had work to do, and I never did, or I would literally go into the lunchroom or into the bathroom and I'd eat lunch and then like go do something. And she's like, I literally thought you were like the most popular girl at school. And I was like, I had no friends. Like I literally felt like a loser. I could not wait to get to college. I hated high school. And it's like
That
so interesting.
surprises me so much because I remember the first time we met, which I could talk about that, but you were just like the natural connection in the room. It felt like you were like the center of like connecting everybody and connecting with people individually and like bringing an energy of friendliness. And so I would
Yeah.
never guess that you like were to yourself a little bit in high school. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
That really blows my mind.
Yeah.
But to talk about like how we met, obviously like I had seen you on socials, and people would like when you're a business coach or a marketing coach, they're like, oh yeah, there's this person. And so I had like seen you, but I didn't know much. And we both, Ashley and I, went to a retreat in what was it, September, October?
Yeah.
Literally
Yeah,
a few months.
September. October?
It's only been
Actually,
2
funny. I
months.
don't know. Was October a month and a
It's
half
only
ago?
been
What the
Yeah, it's only been 2 months of us knowing each other, which is insane because I feel like it's been 20 years. But
20 years. I think we were the
yeah,
same person growing up. I think we split in our 20s about the time we went to engineering school, and
parallel.
I did not. In engineering school, we split into 2 people, but I think we were the same person growing up, just like different backgrounds. I don't
Exactly.
know.
Literally. I think that's so funny. But essentially, we went to this retreat like 2 months ago, hosted by mentors that we both have and love. And we were like sitting in the room, and I like knew of Ashley. Ashley knew of me. And I remember like making a comment about your tracksuit because I thought it was cute. I was like, oh my god, I love your tracksuit. And you were like, and then I was like, oh my god, does she think I'm being sarcastic? Like, does she think I'm a bitch? And I started creating all these stories in my head because I struggled to make female friends sometimes because it was like harder for me growing up, I think. And I was like, oh my god, I hope she doesn't think I'm being mean. Like, I just genuinely like her tracksuit, and it sounded so sarcastic. And I started spiraling in my head, and then we became best friends in like 3 days. So, yeah, Ashley and I met at a retreat. We
That's the
cried.
story. We became friends. Jazz, what the fuck? I thought it was so nice. I like worked really hard. I was like, I want to wear like a cool outfit, which no one else, everyone else was in like black pants, and I was like, I didn't know what people were gonna wear, so I was like, oh, I need to like wear a set. So I like went and bought that. I went and bought that on Wednesday night, and we left on
That's
Thursday.
so funny that you bought that for that day. And I'm glad that I said something then because I meant it.
Right.
Um,
Right. I was like, oh my gosh, she's like so sporty and cool. She likes my outfit. Also, if you compliment a girl's outfit, you will be best friends with them until the day you die. I'm just sorry. Women want to know that we look good. Like women,
exactly.
walk. I will walk across the street to tell someone they look good. Like if you put in the effort, I'm walking across the street to tell you your ass looks good in those jeans. I don't know. That's just me. Like,
I think we're the same in that way because I will always also go out of my way to just tell people what I like and then I'll just like leave it. So we're twins. But yeah, that we met at a retreat, we cried about our feelings. Ashley and I were like the two people that were like telling people what they needed to hear, I think. Ashley does a fantastic job at that. And I feel like she inspired me so much to be my authentic self because that's her energy that she brings to the table by being herself. And we've been like just connected ever since. And throughout 2 months, I feel like I've known her more than I've known most people I've known my entire life. And I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship is you'll find these people who just like get it and match your energy and like actually call you out on your shit and are a real friend, which is really hard to find in life. So I'm really grateful.
First of all, stop it, bitch. I already did my mascara today and it looks really good. So if you make it, we're gonna fight. And this is recorded, so people are gonna know I said that. But you know what's actually interesting? I want to share this. You said something really, first of all, so kind about like being a connector. You know why I'm like that? It's because I never wanted anyone to feel alone. I felt so alone growing up.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yes, I felt so isolated. I never want someone to be alone. And so what I did a lot in my 20s is when women were like, I don't have any friends, I'd be like, well, I'm having bachelor night. And I'd literally host like, we'd watch like, you know, Colton seasons of The Bachelor. When I say bachelor night, not like single women, I'm talking like the show. And I would host Bachelor and a girl would come and I'm like, hey, bring your best friend. And that girl would come. And then these two girls would, and I had like one girl playing volleyball with one girl that went that Wednesday. And I literally at one time had 25 women who came over every Monday night to not even watch The Bachelor. Also at the time I was in sales and I did really well financially and I just felt like that was a blessing I should share. So I ordered dinner every week. I bought like $200 of dinner every week. I made cheese boards. I got new alcohol. Like I would fill my fridge. And I was like, I don't need anything but women should just come together. Because my whole thought was like, I don't care if they leave as my best friends. And this was like 2019 when I remember 3 months prior, I was like at church with my mother and they were talking about like pray for the thing you want, like take today to pray. And I went out into the hallway because I was so embarrassed and I like prayed to God. I was like, God, please give me friends. And he didn't give me any friends for like 3 months. I was like, I'm going to fucking find those friends. So I was like, Bachelor night it is. And I just started hosting. There's 3 girls the first one, then 10 girls the next. And all of a sudden, all these women were coming together. And it wasn't necessarily about them becoming my friend. It was about giving people space to connect with people. And it was so crazy how many people were like, I just needed a friend so bad. And I think that that's really hard. And then on top of that, being an entrepreneur, I just never want someone to be scared to like reach out. Like I literally sometimes will go places like I just hope someone walks up to me and it's like, you're amazing. Do you want to be my friend? Wait, did you ever see that video? Wait, this reminds me of that video. Did you ever see the one? It's like 10 years old. And the girl walks up to like a Chick-fil-A and she's like, hey, like, I don't know if like this is weird, but like I really like your mascara. Do you want to have a sleepover tonight?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking
want
about?
to have a sleepover?
I like, yeah, do you want to have a sleepover? A sleepover? A sleepover? Wait, pull up to the window. And that's like the whole video. First of all, I think they started dating, which is so crazy.
No way.
And I was like, that's the person I want to be. I remember watching that. I was like, one day I will be the girl who everyone's like, if I don't have a friend, I'm calling Ashley. She's going to find me a friend. Like that was like, I feel like my gift in life. Like I was like, I can make people feel like they are never alone. Cause when I would feel alone, like I would spiral and I just never wanted someone to go through that. So like, that's literally, I think why I am the way I am. Cause I'm like, I don't want anyone to be alone or be afraid.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think it's usually we bring to the world like what we wanted growing up. And so whether it's like validation, being seen, being included, whatever it is. And so that makes so much sense to me. And you're like so natural at it. Like you already know what people feel and what you don't want them to feel. And you want to protect them from that. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Oh my God, you're so fucking nice, Jazz. Okay, I do want to talk about something that I didn't tell Jazz we were going to talk about this, but we're going to talk about it because Jasmine's in her vulnerability area. Her vulnerability era, not I feel like it sounds like a area of the body. But so this was really interesting, and I hope it's okay that I share this. Jazz isn't really super personal, but I guess. So perception online, I think is very interesting. When I saw Jazz, I was like, this bitch is killing it. And then Jazz and I meet, we're at this retreat, and she's like, oh yeah, like I stopped my business for months because like I literally felt like a failure and like I'm literally coming out of like the darkest hole. And I was like, what? First of all, I had no idea. I'm sharing that. I hope that's okay, Jazz. But like, I just remember thinking, first of all, there's 2 thoughts I had. One of like, how? Like, I just was shocked. And 2, I also think I was like, wow, it just reminded me, like, you just never know what's happening behind the scenes, because I did a lot of pivots this year, and like most people don't even know that. But can
Yeah.
you like give us a background of that? Because I actually was not part, like, I did not know you during that time. So like, what happened? How did we get there? Like, can you talk about that part of your phase, your business journey?
100%. Let me let my dog in because she's whining. One sec.
Okay. Jazz is like, actually, just give me a moment. Give me a
Give me a sec.
moment. She's trying to. I was gonna ask you this on the podcast, so I just like am bringing it out. We're whipping the schlong out a little bit.
Literally, yeah, we're gonna whip the dick out with no warning. So basically, I went from 0 to 100 in my business. Like I mentioned before, I made like $5,000 months, then I made $50,000 months, and then I was like, "What the fuck? This is the most amount of money I've ever made in my life," and I was the saddest I ever was in my life.
Yeah.
I developed like Hashimoto's disease. I couldn't get off the couch because I was so like overwhelmed, burnt out. I thought I was overworking myself, but I wasn't. It was like an identity shift that I didn't realize was happening. My husband and I went to Costa Rica for 3 weeks, and the entire time I had taken this medication for Hashimoto's, and I was like anxious and having like panic attacks and couldn't breathe. And I like looked like I was having the time of my life. And I didn't know what it was. And it's not that I was trying to hide it because I was trying to pretend. It's that this entire year I've been trying to figure out exactly what I'm going through before I share it. So that way it's not just like a throwing up in a mess of like things that don't make sense. Um,
Yeah.
and so I came back, like in the beginning of the year, I was like trying to figure out, like maybe, because at that time I was focused mostly on marketing. I was like, maybe I need to do business coaching. Maybe like I don't like coaching. Maybe I don't like my business. Maybe I should just go back to a regular job. Maybe I just want to be a content creator. And so I had hired like a dear friend and web designer to create a website for me. And I paid her like a good amount of money. And I was like, hey, like, can we pause? Because I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. And if you make a website, I think it's going to like be completely off, and I think I might just like be a content creator. I have no idea. And she was like, okay, like we'll take a break. So that spiraled, and I ended up taking 3 months away. I didn't post a single fucking thing. I deleted all the social media apps off my phone. Literally dozens of people were like, Jasmine, where the fuck are you? Are you alive? And I was
Yeah.
just like in my shell. We had just moved to Sarasota, Florida. I was hanging out with my puppy every day. And I was just trying to close off and go inward and figure out what's going on. But I ended up just like avoiding everything and reading books and sitting by the bay drinking a coffee, like so tired, even though I slept so much and did nothing all day. And it was really fucking hard. And I had a lot of stories and narratives in my head that I wasn't facing. And I was afraid to go back into the business because I was afraid to feel how I felt before. And I had no idea what to change. I had no idea what the source of this was. And then I talked to my mentor, and I reached out to like her before I hired her. And I was like, hey, you posted something. She basically posted that if you're burnt out, it's not from overworking yourself, it's from a faulty belief system instead of working in alignment with your values. And
Yeah.
that like really called me out. It like triggered something in me. And I'm like, okay. So my burnout is not because I worked too hard or because I did something wrong per se. It was because I had these skewed values and beliefs that were not being faced or like aligned. And I didn't really know what it meant, but I knew that there was something there to explore. And so I reached out to her and I hired her, even though it didn't financially make sense because I was literally like coming off of the end of like all the sales I was having were now gonna like come to a stop at some point because I wasn't making new sales for months and my clients were finishing up. And this would be like the most I've ever paid somebody ever in my life to help me, but it just like felt right for some reason. I just like fucking did it. And I had like a VIP day with her, and it was like amazing where we like mapped out all the stuff that I'm good at, and I got to see it on a wall, and I was like, okay, wow, look at the value I bring to the world. Like I can't give up on this. Like there's something there, and I have to like figure out what those feelings are. And it wasn't overnight, and so I spent months. This was like now the last few months trying to like figure out what the fuck's happening because I'm trying to like get back into the business, and I keep feeling like I hit wall after wall after wall. I keep flip flopping, overthinking, spiraling, and people don't talk about this because they think people won't hire them if they're like going through something. But when I share it with my clients, like I had a really long conversation with them yesterday, and they were like, "Oh my god, that's been me all year. Like I feel so seen. Thank you for sharing that." And it really opened up so much conversation with them and allowed me to support them because just because I'm going through something doesn't mean I can't help them. Like just because like your
Yeah.
personal trainer gains 5 pounds doesn't mean that they're not going to help you lose 50. Like it's just a separate. experience, and they're only going to understand and have seen when you share what you're going through. And so it's been hard. And I think only recently I like went, as you know, to another retreat and was faced with the fact that most of what I've been experiencing is like I live my life reacting on my emotions and I don't actually feel them. I just like feel triggered or dysfunctional and my nervous system's dysregulated and I just like take things out on people and like flip flop and overthink instead of knowing how to like feel my emotions, connect with myself, be present, like all those things. And so what I faced was that I had created all of these like businesses and success in school, success in my career, because I was avoiding like feeling a lot of feelings that I had since I was a kid because I was made wrong for having emotions. And so I didn't know like what I wanted because I wasn't connecting with myself. And so that's really what was coming up. And I thought the success of business last year would bring the feelings of like, connection and fulfillment. And it didn't because the root thing was still not being faced was I was not connecting with myself. I was not feeling my feelings. I was not being present. And like I was not loving myself, if I'm being honest. So that's a long-winded version with a lot of fluff, but yeah.
No, there's like zero fucking fluff in that. When you started your business, you told your parents, right? Eventually or right
Yeah,
away?
I did, but like they never, yeah, I explained it to them. They didn't really understand. My parents are my number one supporters of my business. Like if you look at my likes on Instagram, almost every single one is my mom and then my mother-in-law. And then if you look at my likes on TikTok, it's my dad. And so they know what I'm doing. And when I told them I had finally reached like this big milestone and I was going to quit my job, like I made X amount of money, I called my dad and he
Yeah.
cried. And I was like, okay. And I felt like at that moment where I called my dad and I told him I finally made it and I want to be able to give back to you. And he cried. I realized like that was a negative motivator instead of a positive one. It was like I was trying to like do it for other people or move away towards like the pain instead of moving towards being my best self. It was like for somebody else. And I feel like once I achieved that, like the motivation just like went down and I succeeded, but I didn't feel good. So,
Whoa, that's
yeah.
wild. Did you tell your parents when you took the pause?
Yeah, and I kind of hid it from them, but they visited me halfway through, and I was sitting on the porch, and my dad's a man of few words. He's very like he likes to just talk about business and like he's very like quiet. And we were sitting on the porch and my dad was like, "So you took a break from your business? Why?" And I was like, I don't know. I just feel like made good money and I've always been like working so hard and I deserve a break. And I felt like I was lying to him, but I also felt like I was lying to myself because I didn't know the answer yet. And I felt uncomfortable because if I tell my parents something and I don't know the answer, instead of like helping me through it, they will just add more questions because like that's just how they think. And so I wasn't ready to like open up a can of worms without a solution because they want me to be okay and they don't want to worry about me. So yeah.
Yeah. Did your dad like questioning you on why you actually stopped? Did that make you want to like get back to it to like fix it, or did that like put you more in a spiral?
I think it added more of a spiral to me because I was like, oh, like my dad's questioning it. Like, am I doing something wrong? Like, what's going on? I didn't like to be witnessed in what I was going through because it felt like shameful, and that's why like I hid on social media and all that stuff because I felt like what I was doing was wrong by not moving through it, figuring it out like everybody else online, you know. And it also felt wrong
Mm,
because I think a lot of people, when you're an entrepreneur, you like realize that what you're doing is for other people. And then when you think about your own feelings, you feel selfish, I think. Like that's at least my feeling is like, why can't I just figure it out so I can fucking help people already? Like, why am I making this about me? And I had that story in my head of like, I don't want to talk about me and like what I'm going through. And it
yeah.
felt wrong and selfish for me to like try to figure out my own shit because I was like, I'm holding myself back from like serving other people.
Mm, yeah. I feel like you every time you talked about that period of time, we talked about it a lot when we met because I was like so confused. I was like, wait, what? Like again, if I came in after all of it, so like I didn't necessarily experience the pause. Although I wasn't, I don't know if I was following you or not. Like I don't know if I would have even noticed, but I'm curious, like looking back on it now, you've been to like several retreats. There's been, I think, a lot of growth and just like emotion over the last couple months. Like, how do you feel about that break now? Like, when you reflect on it now, like, what are the emotions or the feelings that you have about
Yeah. I think I'm really grateful. I'm getting emotional even thinking about it because I think a lot of
Sorry,
entrepreneurs, don't be sorry. This is great. I think a lot of entrepreneurs want to stop their business or want to pause or take a break because they don't know how to navigate the emotions. And I feel like going through that myself, I'm now able to help people who feel that way. Um, and so the women in my world, a lot of them tell me I want to take a break, I want to step away, I don't know where to go or what direction I'm going in. I said that in the past, the people in my world were like, okay, like take time off. It wasn't like something they had experienced before. And I feel like because I've gone through that, I'm able to like help people figure out what's really going on so that way they can move through it instead of avoiding it and instead of feeling like
yeah,
they're alone. And so I think like I know you and I talk about like the importance of relationships in business and like it's just allowing me to like see how to be human and how to help people in their humanness instead of feeling like it's wrong.
yeah. I think that's really important. I always say like our obstacles are our superpowers because like they truly are. I think a lot of people see obstacles or bad things that happen as like we did something to cause it, or it's like our fault, or there's we did something wrong, or there's just like all these different narratives that we tell ourselves. But at the end of the day, you know, there's the most successful people in the world, they get cancer. There isn't anything wrong, right? There's people who literally like eat as healthy as possible and they get sick. There's people who have the most incredible businesses and their clients end up hating them because of God knows what. Like, you can't actually avoid every single thing in your life. What you have to do is you have to make decisions based on the information you have at the time. Sometimes you can look back and say, I would have done something different now, but you have different information now. And I think at the time, you were navigating so much and you just had to say like right now I need a break to catch up. And I think that like you probably would have done it differently now, but now when people are doing that, you have different information to present to them that you didn't have when you had to make that decision. And I think that's a superpower. And I think we don't credit people enough for, hey, I went down this path and I would have done it differently, and like now I can help people better. Like I think that's such a beautiful thing. And that's why I really have been talking to a lot of my clients now about like social media. I'm like, you should be utilizing what we call transparency content. It's not really important what the technical piece is, but you should talk about that. Like people want to hear about the mistakes you made. People want to hear about the things you would have done differently. Like I think there's actually a lot of value in that. And I think people will always buy from people more than brands and products and just, you know, businesses in general. So when you're a person that people feel connected to, there is more power in that than just being really good at marketing or really good at sales or really good at messaging. I think that's something that like no one can ever take away from you. So I actually think that's like one of the coolest things about you. I just don't know if I've ever said that, but it is.
Wow, that's amazing because I think I felt a story I told myself when we met and you were like, "Oh yeah, I saw you posted something about like taking a break. Can you talk about that?" And I was like, "Oh my god, am I like not am I talking about it?" The story I told myself was like I talk about it so much that even strangers think that's the only thing about me and I'm making it about me because I'm not
Mm-hmm.
used to being seen, like really being seen, especially in my mistakes. And so I realized when you asked me that, the story I told myself was that like I was like uncomfortable in the first moments and telling myself it was wrong to share those things. But when we've talked more, I realized like you were asking me because it like actually created so much connection between us. And so if I hadn't posted that or shared it or I hid it, it would have prevented like that entire conversation we had, which was like a catapult into like more connection. But
Yeah.
it's interesting you brought up transparency content and like sharing with your audience the struggles you've gone through because that's literally I tell all my clients the same thing and like you and I are the same with that. But one of my clients, she struggled really bad this year with like a huge dip in leads. She was like
Mm-hmm.
consistently getting like application after application after application daily for her offers and her services in web and brand design. And then over the summer, it just like nothing. Like it was like ghosts, crickets, nothing. And she started spiraling. And she was like, maybe I have to like go on Instagram. Maybe I have to do like all these other things and change my entire business and my strategy. But what she actually did, which I fucking love her for, is she posted on her Instagram stories to like her 27,000 followers and was like, hey guys, this has been the hardest year in business and I haven't gotten an application or a lead and it's been really fucking hard. Not even just to make it like a learning lesson, just to be open and be like, this has been hard for me. And I just want to share that with you, even though it was literally 27,000 potential clients and business owners on the receiving end of that message. And the outpour of connection, unlike any other Instagram story, was like insane. She got so many messages of people being like, "Me too. It's been so hard." And the funny thing is like she was telling herself she felt like a fraud sharing that because she is posting every day about building a strong brand and succeeding online. And privately, she was struggling. But when she owned it publicly, she was like, "I felt so free." And I felt like I could now like just create content from a pure energy instead of feeling like I was hiding. And that following like week or whatever following content, she had a video like pop off and now she's booked out through January and with so many high ticket clients. And so I think that there's so much power in sharing, and we often think we have to like put on a show that we have it all together so people want to hire us or so that way we're an authority. But when you do that, not only do you like create this environment where you're not actually showing up authentically and you feel that every time you post, and then your audience feels disconnected from you because you're not connected with yourself or being open, but also you just like don't create the environment of like you basically disempower your audience because you're like, I have it together all the time, and so they're like, okay, well I don't, so cool, good for you. But when you actually open up about your struggles, they're like, oh my god, me fucking too, you get it, like I want to work with you. And it's a very, very big distinction that's uncomfortable but important.
Yeah, I 1000% agree. I really think that I mean, first of all, in the last couple of years, people have been burned more by bad investments. People are getting pushed more products and services than ever before. Social media has really transferred from a entertainment app to a QVC app, like pretty much like people are posting all this stuff. And I think that it's a disruption. We always call it, and by the blazer, disruptive and valuable, one of a kind is like our three beliefs of like what we create for businesses. Like we want to create businesses that way. And it's very disruptive to be like, yeah, I don't have it all together. Because everyone out there right now is like, everything's amazing, everything's successful, I'm booked out, have
Yeah.
8,000 bajillion clients. You're not a business coach. It's like, that's literally the narrative. So, when we talk about, I get so technical about stuff, but when you talk about like an agitational content, which is like, this is what everyone else is doing, this is how I do it, I'm unique and I'm special, and like, you have to hire me. I actually said it to a client once. I said, talking about how you don't have it all together is like almost like you are like here and everyone else is here. Like you naturally isolate yourself, and people might hate you, but the people that love you literally can never look at anyone else because you were the only one doing it. And I think there is really big power in standing in a circle of one and just being like, I'm here. And like you everyone else gets lost in the crowd. You naturally stand out. And I think that there's like something really powerful about that. So I always like take things back to content because I'm
100%.
just a psychopath. It's funny
No,
that you said that about your clients. It does happen all the time. I just
yeah,
think it's everyone.
it's I always say like the differentiating factors are like what's going to make people choose you over other people. So like one of my clients, she based in Singapore, and she helps people with their business and marketing. And she used to always tell me privately, like, yeah, I just think like people in the US have a different mindset. So like this people in Singapore, like in my country, they don't get the same results because people don't understand how they think. And I'm like, okay, fucking post that. And every time she posts it, she gets so many people are like, I want to work with you because you get how I think. And so I think people are always like, I have to have like this magic strategy or this magic information, or like I remember at the retreat I was just at, a woman was like, I'm not saying anything that like fucking Buddha hasn't said before. So why are people going to want to hire me? And I'm like, that's not why people hire you. Like you can chat GBT, you can Google all the information. It's about understanding people and then differentiating yourself. Like you said, being in your own category, or I've heard some people say like category of one. And the way you do that is either by calling out in the ways you're different, or just like embodying that, like you've mentioned, by being transparent when everybody else is hiding, by being vulnerable when everybody else looks like they have it all together. And so there's a lot of different ways to do it, but the hardest part is like you have to own the outcome, and you have to own the discomfort, and you have to like not listen to the stories in your head, and then you have to like do something really uncomfortable that you probably are not used to, because a lot of us as entrepreneurs want to be successful, want to be like very authority looking. And it can be really hard when you see everybody else getting results from doing it the opposite way. And you're like, okay, I have no proof that this is going to help me or work. I only have the stories in my head telling me that this is fraud-like behavior, and I you have to do it anyway. So
Yeah, 1000%.
yeah,
Okay, I have one final question for you, but this has nothing to do with something you can teach someone. It's just about you. Because it's a weird thing about podcasts. I think podcasts can be a value for other people, but I also think I always rewatch my old podcast from years ago and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm a completely different person. So this is something you can mark down on November 20th of 2025. You can come back to this episode and see how you feel about this answer. But I just want to ask you, like, what are you most proud of this year? Like, in reflecting on 2024, going into a new year, we're almost at the end of it. Like, what are you most proud of from this
damn
past
girl,
year?
you make me cry right now. We're gonna end with tears. Uh,
You can always edit tears out. Don't you worry, Jazz.
I think the thing I'm most proud of this year is like going through a lot of hard shit and like sharing it with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Sweet and simple and to the point. Well, I'm so happy that you are here, Jazz. Like, I know we didn't really go into this episode with a lot of plan. Like, you guys know me. I end every episode just being like, look, this is what we did. But I really just wanted people to like see you because I think that is the most scary thing in the world. But also, like, that is a power that I just do not think can be in an Instagram post. It can't be in like, a curated video. Like, it doesn't exist unless it's through an authentic conversation. So I just appreciate you coming. I know I asked you questions I didn't say I was going to ask you. And just like hopefully inspiring people who are maybe going through a time in their life where not everything is making sense or they don't necessarily have all the pieces of the puzzle yet, that like there is so much beauty in just navigating that in whatever way it comes and being able to look back and use that as a superpower moving forward. And I just am so grateful that you were here. And one, I'm grateful you're here, but two, I'm just grateful that we met. Like, you have changed my life in just a couple months, and I'm just so thankful for you. So, where can people find you, Jazz? They are. I know you're going to get a lot of DMs after this, but where can people find you? How do you want people to connect with you? Give us the goods.
Yeah, so I actually just changed my Instagram handle. So it's just my first and last name at Jaz Sawaged. It used to be Jazz Media LLC because that's my business name. But yeah, at Jaz Sawaged, that's where you can find me. And yeah, that's my Instagram, my TikTok. That's where I go. I'll have a website one day, but you don't need one to succeed in business, so it's fine.
You don't even succeed. Well, we'll link that below. If it changes, then screw you, Jazz. You're gonna make our life very difficult. But just kidding. We will link that below. You guys should just send her a message. Let her know if there's any. Jazz does love messages. I will say that. She didn't say that, but I'm saying it for her. Just send her a message. Let her know if anything resonated, or send me a message, and I'll pass it on to her. But thank you so much for coming. This was a ton of fun. I could have done this like all day long, as we usually do on phone. So it's nice to do it for other people, so people can kind of see what our conversations are like. But I appreciate you so much for being here.
I love you.
Love you.